Thank you very much. I'm operating today. I keep forgetting. I've been so busy doing different things the last few days. I haven't told the engineering types that the headset that I'm wearing on the air has only one ear working. So I'm operating as if I am partially deaf. Now, I'm blind in my right eye. The headset is deaf in the left ear. I guess that should balance things out before the program is over. But if you're calling this morning, I may be straining a little bit to hear what you have to say. And if I come across as being a little bit on the addle-brain side, it's just simply because I'm working with a headset that has apparently shorted out on one side. Aside from that, everything is normal in my life. I would like to thank Forrest Anderson for taking me yesterday out to Shaw Shooting in Hagerman, and I got to tour the facility. And all I can tell you is, wow. He put it this way. He said it is world class. He was absolutely right. Forrest is going to be joining us. Of course, he's from Washington Street Pawn here in Twin Falls. He's going to be joining us tomorrow just after 9 o'clock news. We have a lot to talk about when it comes to firearms and firearms usage. And I also actually got to do a little bit of a shooting myself yesterday for the first time in 30 years or more, actually fired ammunition at a target. And even though I can't see out of my right eye to save my life, managed to actually hit a few targets, which caught me a little bit by surprise that after all this time I was still able to do that. We'll talk more about that, as I say, tomorrow, and I thank you for joining me today. Bill Colley on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and NewsRadio1310.com. There is just so much to talk about and too little time to talk about it. I only have, 77 actual minutes of talk time per day, as I've explained before, but I wanted to open up today with a few thoughts about some Idaho state politics. The Associated Press this morning has a story on the wire that says Russ Fulcher is going to run again for governor. Now, he is a Republican, and of course, he lost by 13,000 votes when he tried to challenge Governor Butch Otter, our sitting governor, a couple of years ago. Why is he announcing now 2 years in advance? Well, he says he wants people to know that he's making another try, but he's not the only one who's this early because Lieutenant Governor Brad Little already announced quite some time ago. So you've got two Republicans who are already telling you that they're in the mix, and we're not even to the general election here in 2016. So these guys are trying to get things all set. That is, their supporters behind them, trying to build their campaigns early. But I have a reasonable belief that it's going to become an even more crowded field. I kid you not. I think that Raul Labrador will jump in following his reelection to the House of Representatives. He can't say much now. I mean, if you're running for the House of Representatives, you don't want to say, oh, and by the way, after I finish the next 2 years, I plan to be the governor. But I have a sneaky suspicion the reason he's on the air with us on a monthly basis, even though this is not his district, and he's doing this all over the state, is to sort of burnish his credentials too, at least, or to just as an outreach. So the voters out there remember his name and know that he's still a busy man and he's working on various legislative ideas. It's got to be a challenge though for anybody from the western states to serve in the House or the Senate in Washington. It's got to be the worst for like Lisa Murkowski from Alaska or the folks in the delegation from Hawaii because they really can't make it home every weekend. On the other hand, many years ago, I knew a member of the House of Representatives named Andy Harris. Andy Harris lived in Annapolis, and he got himself elected from the state legislature in Maryland to the U.S. House of Representatives. And Dr. Harris took his seat, but he only had to drive a few minutes to work again every day. So he would drive a few blocks to work when he was serving in Annapolis in the state legislature, got elected to the national legislature, if you will, to Congress, and ended up driving just a few more miles to get to the office. That's easy for people like that, and they can be home every night. And they can be very close to he actually was still practicing medicine too as well. He was practicing medicine out of Easton, Maryland, on the eastern shore of the Chesapeake Bay, and he would also be out shopping in the local grocery stores, so he would see his constituents face to face in many different situations. But if you're in Idaho or Washington State or in Alaska or California or any of these places, that travel becomes a bit of a burden. But this is why I think that Labrador is going to try to get his name also tossed into the ring. Think about that. Then you would have three choices for Republicans and conservatives in the state of Idaho. And then it becomes interesting. That becomes then the real competition because, let's be honest, the numbers still aren't there that would support a Democrat running for governor in the state. So you could have three Republicans, and the winner of the primary is essentially going to then have a cakewalk come November 2018, and then move into the well, I don't know, call it the mansion any longer. They've had some changes of address for the governor over the last several years. However, we will have one of those three likely be the next governor. It's just a matter of how they're going to divvy up all of the support. 12 minutes after 8 o'clock, Bill Colley with you on Top Story. Meanwhile, Fulcher could split that vote, that alternative vote out there with Labrador, and then leave Brad a Little with a more traditional Republican vote, and therefore put Brad a Little into the governor's job. We have a caller with us. Caller, you're on the air with Bill Colley on Top Story. Go ahead.
Yeah, I happened to get in. I didn't even hear it ring.
Well, it was flashing for a while, so go ahead.
I had a question for you. I moved to Florida, and I kind of like to hear old Rush on Sunday, and I try to tune in on it online, and I can't get him. Did you change that time?
Well, that's on topic. Thank you for the call, first of all. I have no idea, but I'll have to ask the programming department. And usually all those shows on the weekends are about 5 days old. So I'm just saying, it's when you're hearing someone talk to somebody about an event that has already come and passed. But no, but thank you for the being 100 miles outside of the range of what we were talking about. Always glad to hear those calls. We had one the other day, and you just wonder sometimes what people are actually listening to. They're not really. I mean, he's more concerned about Rush than anything else. Thank you, by the way. But I do a show here, too, just in case you didn't know. You can also listen to that 5 days a week. I don't do it on weekends, although I probably wouldn't object to doing something on a live basis once in a while on weekends. 13 minutes after 8 o'clock, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. Maybe some of you out there actually have a rash or something, and you'd like to share that with me this morning, too. That'll keep us going right on topic. But other than that, the gatekeeper is not going to take too many of those calls today. You're on the air. You're up next on KLIX.
Bill, I'll talk to you about something on the subject. Just what you're talking about now. For all those never Trumpers and never Hillarys, we need to keep in mind that they are not the only system in the works. We have to pay attention to the House and Senate, because if we have to have moral people in those seats to keep people in line. And I say that's even more important than who we put in the presidency.
And the moral aspect of all of this, I when I was doing my little pregame warm-up on the Facebook video today, I got into some details. How did we get here? And if I get a chance a little later in the show, I'm going to read off a bunch of headlines from various places in the Western world that will give you the impression that we're no longer a moral people whatsoever, which is why we have the choices we suddenly have running for president this year. If you're a Trump supporter, gosh, it's almost like being in a cult. You can't even criticize Trump the least bit without these people going all ape all over you. And number two, if you're a Hillary supporter, how can you support anyone who has absolutely no moral character or compass whatsoever? Here we are. How did we get here?
Well, the dollar. And it's the same on both sides. You can't criticize either one of them without the supporters not trying to engage you in a logical debate. They get upset. But our problem is, and it's our fault. As voters, it is our fault. We put somebody in office that promised us something that never happened, and they go crooked, and we listen to their lies, because the only time we pay attention to them is when they're running for office. We never look at their voting history or anything else, and we vote them back in, a.k.a. Simpson. So, it's unbelievable that we sit here and say that our system is crooked when we're not the ones keeping track of it.
Well, but then there you go again. The Democrats aren't going to put up anyone that I would take over Mike Simpson. I confuse him with another politician I know by the name of Simpson now and then. But the Democrats aren't going to put up anyone that I would choose over him. Number two, I don't know much about his past Republican challengers and primaries, but I get the impression, at least from people I've talked to, that people who come in and start rambling on about how they think spacemen are coming down and giving them advice in the middle of the night, and I'm exaggerating there, but if you're going to have a credible candidate, go ahead and vote for that person. But a lot of the people, and I thank you for the call, a lot of the people who've challenged Mike Simpson in the past, apparently, we used this term the other day, are a few bricks shy of a load. How can you then vote for them? You need a credible candidate. 817, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX or newsradio1310.com. And right now, 53. Rather cool morning, but we're going to warm back up this weekend with temperatures by the beginning of next week in that 90-degree range again, perhaps for the last time. I shouldn't say that, but perhaps for the last time this summer. I thank you for joining me today on the program. Telephone number to reach us, 736-0300. We are no longer the people we used to be. I was saying in my warm-up video today, I've been watching a lot of the old, YouTube has a channel where you can watch a lot of the very old episodes of a show that I loved when I was a kid called What's My Line? And I love that show. I love as they try to guess what people are, what they do for a living, or even a celebrity guest when the old panelists would have to put on the masks and try to piece together things when they couldn't even see someone. I'm going to guess that most of the panelists on that program who were on that show, some of them for years and years and years and years and years. I mean, the book publisher that was on the show, Bennett Cerf, made that a second career. I'm going to guess that most of those people were liberal. But the liberals of that era were abhorred by the thought that a woman would kill her baby in the womb. They would have found people marrying horses, cows, and pigs to be abhorrent, or people doping up their kids so their kids who think that they don't know what they are, girl or boy. People are now doping up their kids before their kids even grow up and could make these decisions as a rational adult. They would have found all of that abhorrent too. Where did we go wrong? When did we start going down that slippery slope? And then you've got the state of Idaho. I noticed this on the AP wire this morning as well. 15 years after 9/11, they're going to be downplaying the yellow ribbons this year. Instead of 4 big ribbons around the columns at the Capitol building, they're just going to move 2 of them over to the Memorial Park and downgrade it somewhat. Well, okay, it's time, I guess, to forget about that horrific day in our history. Let's move on now. Nothing to see here. Nothing to see here. Or, it's been years since courts made a decision that children didn't have to recite the Pledge of Allegiance in schools. That's not a new story. But schools are now sending out paperwork to the families saying, if your kid doesn't want to do it, just remember they don't have to. In other words, telling people they have an out, giving them that option. How did we get here? And why did we let that happen? Why did we let, if you will, the Visigoths over the wall so that they could take over the country and destroy it? I'll have more coming up in just a moment. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX and newsradio1310.com, 53 right now. I've got a lot to talk about on this subject today. I have a stack of stuff that's related to it. We also, I believe, have a guest coming up in a few minutes from the Twin Falls County Sheriff's Department. And I hope you can stick around because I'm here until 10 o'clock this morning. Couple of notes to pass along this morning, and just want to remind you folks again about my trip last weekend to the Last Stand Survival Shop, which still has some specials going on this week connected to its grand opening. They had the big party there on Saturday. Hundreds of people came out, but they still have some of these specials going on. Also, they're working with people who actually build their own firearms. Build some for you, too, gunsmiths. You can actually go in there, have someone work with you, and you can get something customized that's the best fit overall for you personally. And we need to point out that these are veteran gunsmiths, and they are NRA certified as well. So these are people who know exactly what they're doing. And I wanted to point out Tiffany. She had a chance to talk to us on Saturday while we were out there and explained a little bit about, what businesses they do. But they're also going to help people pick and choose things that they would need, again, personalized for your own needs. How you would put together a bug-out bag if you ever needed to get out of town, that is, quickly, and get to a safer place. You should always really have a place designated that you could go to in that type of situation. I'd also like to mention my friends at Ramsey Heating and Electric today. Yes, we will have a couple of hot days next week. Does look that way. As we get ready for the Twin Falls County Fair, obviously the weather's going to turn a little hotter. You can't walk around the grounds, unless it's 90, 95 degrees. But we want to point out the winter is on the way, obviously, and that means if you have not yet tested your furnace to see if it's working or if it's working well, you should probably do that. And if you've got an issue, you need to call the pros at Ramsey Heating and Electric because they'll get the job done right and they'll do it the first time. And they sell problem-free cozy winners. And you can contact Ramsey Heating and Electric by either dropping in Burley at the shop at 2600 Overland Avenue or telephone the shop at 678-0459. That's Ramsey Heating and Electric, where they sell warm winters and cool summers. 825 now. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. We are living in probably the most interesting times of my lifetime. And I would dare say that you would have to go back probably to the Depression era and World War II to find a country that is in such crisis. And yet, while the economy right now is soft and has been soft for many, many years, it's not nearly as dire as it was in the 1930s. And we aren't looking necessarily, at least at the moment, as a threat on a large scale like we had with the Japanese and the Germans in World War II that they were doing to the world, although these things could well be on the way. So here we are, and we're a country right now, I guess, that is having something more than a crisis of confidence. I think that we're a group of people right now that are adrift. We don't know where we're going. And that's almost as bad. At least during the Depression, people had some notion, well, we can always find ways out of this and it will get better. But now you look around and you say to yourself, I don't see that happening. And it's not so much a worry, I think, about institutions any longer, which we don't seem to trust anymore, but it's just a worry that the people around us are going to let us down. We have a caller, say 27, Bill Colley with you on KLIX, and you're on the air.
The thing about it, though, it seems like the economy is okay, but our government is papering over the problems that we have with debt, and they're dumping money into the economy, and we have no. In reality, it's a charade, more or less, and to me, I think things could be a lot worse. Maybe this is a good thing. I don't know, but it just seems to me like we're just digging a deeper hole.
Yeah, we don't. And thank you for the call. We don't have any unifying events any longer. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, we can't even 15 years later be unified around 9/11. And really, we probably weren't more than 15 months, if not even 15 weeks after it happened. Speaking of the economy, the worldwide central bankers from all over the world, including the Federal Reserve, meeting right now just down the highway in Jackson Hole. And there's a writer at Wall Street Journal today who was saying these people at the Federal Reserve need to stop trying to rely on these other foreign banks. First of all, you can't control what any of them do. So stop trying to even do that. Focus exclusively on what you're doing at home. But that's a tall order. That would mean that the writer at Wall Street Journal actually trusts what Janet Yellen and all of these other people are actually out to do. And I think a lot of people would say they're not really looking out for any of us. They're looking out for people they see on the dinner circuit. And they're looking out for the other people that are staying in the very expensive hotels with them in Jackson Hole this week. To sit here and say that they're concerned about whoever is, wiping up after they finish their lunch every day, nah, it's not going to happen. 829, Bill Colley with you on Top Story this morning on News Radio 1310, KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Ken Menzel is going to be joining us in just a moment from the Twin Falls County Sheriff's Department. I'm sure he has a lot to talk about, too, and his job is, of course, to keep all of you safe. He does have more concern about you than Janet Yellen, I'll put it that way. He just doesn't have access to all the money she has, which isn't to say that he wouldn't want to, but that's a story for another day. It's 54 right now, and you're listening to News Radio 1310 KLIX.